Currently, the to-do list output in this app is being rendered directly in the main app component's render method. We can clean this up by refactoring it out to its own component. First, I'll add a new file to the component to-dos directory, and I'll call it todolist.js. And I'll start the file by importing React from React. And we're going to make this a stateless functional component, so let's just export a const. We'll call to-do-list, and that's going to equal an arrow function that takes props. And we're going to have that return some JSX. And for now, we'll just make that a placeholder that says to-do-list. So I'll just save that file, and then we're going to jump into app.js. And up at the top, we'll see that we're importing this to-do form component by specifying the complete path to that file. Now we could create a second line to import the to-do list component and specify the full path to that. But because we have multiple components related to the same piece of functionality and they live in a single directory, we can clean this up a bit. I'm going to start by going to the component/to-do directory and adding a new file. And I'm going to call that file index.js. And we're going to use index.js to basically import all of our components and re-export them so they're coming from a single source. So we'll start with an export. And we'll say we're going to export to-do form from our relative path to the to-do form component. And we want to be able to also get our newly created to-do list component. So let's just duplicate that line. And we'll update that so that we're also exporting to-do list from the to-do list component. So now let's go update our app.js file. So we're going to take this import where we're importing to-do form from component/to-do/to-do form. And we're just going to cut that down to component/to-do. We'll save this, and when the browser reloads, we'll know if our form still shows up. And everything appears to be in working order. So we can also add our to-do list to that import. And now we can jump down to the bottom of the file and we'll add an instance of that to-do list component to our JSX just to make sure it shows up. And we'll see when the browser refreshes, the to-do list is in here. This is our placeholder content. So our imports worked. So now that we have that set up, let's take this entire div for our to-do list and I'm going to cut it. And I'm also going to get those files out of the way. And I'm going to go into the to-do list.js file, and we're going to replace this placeholder JSX with the markup for our to-do list. And now that we've moved this JSX into a stateless functional component, we can no longer get our to-dos through this.state. So we'll have to update this to say props.todos, and then we're going to have to update app.js to pass to-dos into our props. So I'll jump over to app.js, and I'm going to add a to-dos attribute on this component. And we're going to pass in this.state.todos, and everything's working as expected. Now let's take another look at our to-do list component. We have an opportunity here to break this down even further. Let's create a component that represents an individual to-do list item so that we can map over that and make this code easier to read. We'll start by adding another file to our to-do directory, and we'll call this todoitem.js. And we'll start this file by importing React from React. And I'm going to export a constant called todoitem. And that's going to be a function that takes props and returns some JSX. And for our JSX, we'll just grab that from to-do list. So I'm going to select this entire LI. I'm going to cut that. And I'm going to paste that into todoitem. Now we need to refactor this because we've moved this into its own component. We don't have access to anything called to-do anymore, so we're going to have to get these values from props. So I'll save that. We'll jump back into to-do list. And now we need to map over our to-dos, and we need to return a to-do item from each of these. And in order to use this, we're going to need to import it. So I'm going to jump up to the top here, and I'm going to say import to-do item. We'll put that in curly braces because we're exporting it with a name from relative path to to-do item. And now I need to get my properties from my to-do into the to-do item component. So if you remember, we referenced props.name and props.id to get those to-do properties. So what I could do is I could say ID equals, and then grab the ID off of the to-do that's being passed in by map. And then I could also say name equals to-do.name. And this would work, but it's going to get very verbose. There's a much faster way to do this. So I'm going to take these out of here, and I'm going to replace them with a pair of curly braces surrounding a reference to to-do preceded by the spread operator. And that's going to take all the properties of to-do and spread them out and basically pass them into this component as their own individual properties. So with that in place, we can save. And when the browser reloads, we'll see everything's still working. So we haven't broken anything, and all of our refactoring has been successful. There is one exception though. If I go into the browser and I open up the DevTools, we're going to see that I have a warning about looping over items without a unique key prop. We took care of that before, but if we go back into our to-do item, we'll see that the key is on this li. And that worked when the li was directly in the loop, but because it's in its own component, that's not where we want it anymore. So I'm going to cut that out of to-do item.js. And I'm going to go back into to-do list, and now I'm going to give the to-do item component a key property, and I'm going to set that equal to to-do.id, and we'll save that. And this time when the browser reloads, the error goes away.